Thank you so much for watching Bethel Assembly Online today. During this series, the Beatitudes, we will learn that being blessed is not always about receiving, but it's about having the right attitude. I encourage you that during this series, open your hearts and minds to what God may be speaking to you. If you have any questions, need prayer, or would like to support this ministry financially, please visit our website at bethellife.com. Thanks again for watching.
Well, let's go ahead and get into the message, the Beatitudes. If you have your Bible, turn with me to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5 this morning. And I am just, for the due diligence that we need with the Beatitudes, I'm going to have to give you a little backstory on how this is all happening, how the Sermon on the Mount, the message that changes everything, is this title. And that is the appropriate title. This message, the Beatitudes, change everything, and we are the byproducts of that message. What Jesus teaches on the Sermon on the Mount changes the motivation for everything that happens in Christianity. And it is the catapulting point for us to move forward, not just to look for miracles, but to understand the character of Christianity. Up until this time, the Jews that were following Jesus, they were chasing him because of the miracles that were happening. They were just blown away that it looked like a circus was coming to town every time Jesus came to town because he was doing such phenomenal acts of miracles. They were chasing him for the miracles. And when we get to the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is going to share some viable and valuable information. Some of this I did not share in the first service. I saved it for the second service. There are a number of you that are in both services today, so you're going to be able to put both services together and go, why didn't you just do that in the first service? I didn't have the time. So I decided to break different elements out into different parts of the message. As you're looking at Matthew chapter 5, let me give you a little backstory. When the end of the Old Testament is approaching the final pages of Malachi, and we're going to go into this 400-year period of silence where there's not a prophet speaking to Jerusalem, to the Jews, to the Jewish nation. There's no dedicated prophet being the man or the voice of God for the people. There's 400 years of silence. The final words that Malachi is given from the Lord is a stern warning of cursing. If you don't obey my words, you're going to be cursed. If you're going to steal in Malachi 3, you're robbing God if you're not going to pay your tithe. Everything has to do with judgment. And the finality of the Old Testament is that we have given you enough information over this period of time that you should be walking in the ordinances, the law of God, and yet you're not. So here's the end of the story. If you don't do right, you're going to be cursed. Selah, go home. And that's about the way it ends. 400 years of silence. And you must remember that the temples, the Jewish temples, are going through the pattern of what they have been taught from Moses, the Mosaic covenant. They are the people who've been following David in the Davidic covenant, and that small sector of people who are following the Abraham agreement. These three sectors of Jews, they are going through the rote of 400 years of what they have been going through for 1,000 years. And every priest, everyone who worked in the temple, the final words were, if you don't obey, you're cursed. We fast forward 400 years, and the story picks up with a woman getting pregnant by her husband. His name was Zechariah. Her name was Elizabeth. The child they're going to have is John. John is going to be birthed 5 months before Jesus. And John and Jesus are first cousins. Zechariah, as we know according to Scripture, as you study it back, is actually carrying the mantle of the priesthood of Israel. And Zechariah and Elizabeth are going through the patterns. And when you read about it, it was his day. It was his lot to be working in the temple on this day. He had the blessing to be where he was. And so the angel of the Lord appears to Elizabeth and says, you're going to have a child, and he's going to be a forerunner for Jesus. And she goes, yay. Cool. You're going to be blessed. Zechariah who has the knowledge of Scripture from all the years back. When the angel comes to Zechariah and says, hey, you're blessed. You're going to have a forerunner. His name's going to be John. Zechariah basically goes, wait a minute, hold it. I don't know about that. And the angel of the Lord says, because of your disbelief in what I just told you, you're going to be mute. You're not going to be able to talk till your son's born. I just doubted. And he doesn't speak. He doesn't speak until the birth. Then Mary shows up. And the angel appears to Mary and goes, you're blessed. You're gonna birth the Son of the living God. You are going to manifest God in flesh. And her response is to bless the Lord. And you can read the blessing of Mary. We know that Joseph was in on this because he goes ahead and marries her. And so as we get to the Sermon on the Mount, you have to understand the backstory. The religious people were stuck in the religious pattern of you live so you don't get in trouble. The people who were walking circumspectly before God were going to allow God to change the path. And that's why there's a difference in religious people and people with relationship in Christ. Religious people will always tell you that the rules have to be followed. Relation people will tell you if Christ gives us directions, Christ knew the rules and he's blessed us in the direction. And so it's kind of perplexing that those who are of the law are still waiting for the cursings to fall, and yet in the middle of this, all of a sudden there's blessings. So the Old Testament ends in cursing. The New Testament begins in blessings. And here's the bottom line. It's your choice. Do you want to live by cursings or do you want to live by blessings? It's your choice. And that's the good thing about grace. That's the good thing about Jesus. And when Jesus comes on the scene and is baptized in the River Jordan down by Tiberias, for you that have never been there, Tiberias is one of the lowest spots physically Jesus will be at. From Tiberias to Caesarea Philippi, the northernmost point where he preaches, back to Jerusalem, it's all uphill. He marches up these mountains everywhere. And as he's marching up these mountains, he's doing things. So when he comes out of the water baptism, he is reported that John has been thrown in jail, and he retreats back into Naphtali and Zebulun. You can see that in Matthew chapter 4. And when he retreats back to to Zebulun and Naphtali, he's retreating back because he has to deal with this paradox in his life. He is the Son of God, and he is the Son of Man. He can live as the Son of God, and he has to live as the Son of Man. But the fact of the matter is he's got to live as both. It's not an either or. It's a both and. And so he's being ministered to by angels. After the temptations, you read the scriptures, angels are ministering to him. And he finds out that John's been thrown in prison, and he retreats. He doesn't, for us, if we had angels dealing with us and we get a piece of bad news, we just think, let's just go fix it. We got angels with us. We go take down anybody we want. That's not what Jesus did. Jesus pulled back and he prayed. Let me share something with you about the circumstances and the pathways of life. When you are brought into a season of decision or a season of travail, if your first action is a reaction, you're going to lose. When you are given a piece of information of pain, trouble, anguish, death, desperation, destitute, your first action is not to react and fix. Your first action is to pull back and pray. Because if you react according to what you think you have, you're going to act in the power of your own might. If you pull back and seek God, in the seasons of your panic, you pull back and pray so you can foster yourself in the peace of God's presence. And it's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy because we want to go and try to make things happen. But yet we need to pull back in the panic and let God give us the peace. Well, what's that got to do with the greatest message ever taught? Everything. Because as Jesus does this, he comes out of Naphtali and Zebulun, and he is going to do some really weird things. Number one, he's going to go to Cana, and he's going to turn water into wine. He's going to go to a person with an unclean spirit, and he's going to cast the demon out of him. He's going to heal many people, including Peter's mother-in-law. He is going to cleanse a leopard, heal someone that is paralyzed, and he's going to stretch a withered hand before the Sermon on the Mount. And he's doing this outside of Jerusalem. So all the Jews, all the Samaritans, he is making his name known to the outer wall. See, it's the outer wall Jews that love Jesus. It is the inner wall, and the wall is what I'm talking about, the wall of Jerusalem. It's the Jews that lived inside Jerusalem that kills Jesus, not the Jews outside the wall that killed Jesus. And so Jesus, as he's performing these miracles, the problem is he's up there in Tiberias and Capernaum and Zebulun, and he's up on this northwest side of the Sea of Galilee, and all this stuff is happening. And he's gathering troops. He's getting an alliance. He's getting people to follow him. So as he comes out of all this, the next thing we know, he has this group coming out of Capernaum with him. And he's going to try to pull back, like he always has, produce, pray. Prepare, produce, pray. Prepare, produce, pray. That was his cycle. And he's trying to pull back to pray. And these crowds are coming with him. And he looks up and he tries to retreat to a barren area of the northwest part of the Sea of Galilee. The people won't stop. They keep coming. They're coming by the thousands. And so Jesus has these thousands of people. And he sees them out there. And in Matthew chapter 5, we pick up the story, if it can go on the screen. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. Keep that up on the screen. And he sat down, and his disciples came to him. Oh, I got it right here, too. Oh, cute. I like that. That's so neat. Oh, you're here. I forgot. I just got wild up in that. And I was taught that Jesus stood up and spoke to 20,000 people. And his voice resonated across the mountainside because he was a son of God. And in the way the Sea of Galilee was built, it's just this giant amphitheater. I want to tell you, I got on the top of one of those mountains and screamed. That teacher lied to me. That Sunday school teacher meant well, but that's not the truth. They couldn't hear me 100 yards from me. And I have a pretty loud voice. What happened is Jesus, as he's mingling with the people, this thing is 3/4 of a mile to 1.5 miles long. From the shoreline up toward the top parts of the mountains are somewhere right in the vicinity of 3/4 of a mile. It looks like a carnival out there. There's out there people throwing nets, trying to catch fish. They're trying to get in boats. They're trying to hang out with their families. They're telling about did you see what I saw that day? Did you see about that leopard? Can you believe he healed a leopard? I'm telling you, he healed a leopard. And Jesus realized with this crowd this fast, he is going to have to pull himself away to add a fourth piece to prepare, produce, pray. And it's now going to be prepare, teach, produce, teach, pray, teach. And he pulls himself to the top of the hill so they can see everything. And he calls the 12 disciples up. And they come up, and he says, guys, I need to teach you about all that down there. Because I can't tell you yet, but I'm going to be leaving you shortly. And you need to understand how these people move. And if you don't understand that, we're all in trouble. And he begins this. Sitting on that mountaintop. Instead of saying, boys, here's your first little bit of wisdom. See that crowd down there? The more you're around people, the better you'll like dogs. Remember that, boys. No, he doesn't say that. He starts off with this. Blessed are the poor in spirit. They will inherit the earth. Now, for a long time, I never really caught how it started out this way. And then as I've been doing a lot of study on this for the last 4 or 5 years through the healthy church models that I teach and work with, Jesus understood that if you're going to teach people about people that need to learn about him, you always have to start with motive. You don't start with giftings. You don't start with fruit. You start with motives. Why is it doing it? There are 9 motives of the Spirit in this portion of the Beatitudes that Pastor is going to unpack to you during this series. These motives are the regulations and processing points of why you do what you do. If your motives are not pure, your fruit cannot be pure. If your motives are not pure, your gifts will be manipulated. And Jesus realizes that there will come a time in Galatians where Paul is going to say, let me teach you about the fruit of the Spirit. And there's going to come a time where Paul's going to teach in 1 Corinthians, let me teach you about the gifts of the Spirit. But it is Jesus himself who says, fruits and gifts are important. Motive, I want you to hear from me. If your motive is wrong, the fruit will be wrong and the gifts will be used and manipulated. And if you take love and you plant it in the soil of bad motives, the fruit that bears off that seed of love will be hatred. And that you have to understand your motives are important. But if your motives are pure, when I plant seed into it, the seed will dominate the soil. And the seed will bring forth its fruit. And it will be blessed as I want it to be blessed. The only thing that can hamper seed is to take seed and throw it on hard dirt. To put seed and stick it on asphalt. To take seed and put it on concrete. Because no matter how much you water it, that seed can't germinate. But if you put the seed in the proper motive soil, the seed will command the soil and it will bring an increase of harvest. And he starts with saying, you got to keep your motives pure all the time. And I'm going to tell you the 9 motive tools that you have to check on all the time. And the first thing I want to let you know is blessed are the poor in spirit. They will inherit the earth. Now, contrary to popular belief, this scripture has nothing to do with people who do not have income to live on. It does not have anything to do with people who have lost their jobs. It has nothing to do with people who are going through desperation of illness. It has nothing to do with people who feels that the world is against them. It has nothing to do with that. As we look at the scripture again, blessed are the poor in spirit. Because see, as I shared with you earlier, the Old Testament talked about if you don't do right, you're cursed. The New Testament comes out and says you're blessed because you've been doing right. You're blessed because you've been doing right. You're blessed because you're doing right. You're blessed because you're doing right. You're blessed because you're doing right. You guys, now that you're with me on this Sermon on the Mount, you're looking at this big multitude. Let me tell you something. I want you to be blessed beyond measure. I want you to have life, and I want you to have it more abundantly. So I'm going to start teaching on the protocol of the Spirit that made all this happen. And that is, I want to teach you about blessings. Blessed. Jesus will use this term over and over and over again. He's going to use it 9 times here. And when he's done doing the 9 Beatitudes, he's going to say, if you don't live under the proper motive of the Spirit, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to have divorce. You're going to have hatred. You're going to hate one another. You're going to steal from one another. You're going to lie from one another. You're not going to know how to pray. You're going to argue about oaths. You're going to argue about everything. You're going to talk about murder. You're going to talk, your worlds will be upside down. And that's what the rest of the Sermon on the Mount is. The consequences of not walking in the blessed life. And he starts off with saying, blessed are the poor in spirit. What does that mean? As Jesus was looking at that multitude, he knew that some, a very small few, had experienced his touch. He knows that a larger group had been part of the experience. But he knows that the most of the crowd is only hearing it second and third and fourth hand. And it's being either diluted or exaggerated. And exaggeration and the dilution of truth doesn't set you free. The truth sets you free. And Jesus is saying, those who are poor in spirit have never comprehended my truth. A person that has not comprehended my revelation of who I am, what I'm going to do, and how I'm going to make it happen, they're poor in spirit because they will never know me. However, if someone who has never known me accepts me, what's the reward? We get to inherit. Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord, check this out. Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall inherit the kingdom of heaven. Because when the darkness becomes light and the lie becomes truth, and you confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, you were once poor in spirit, and now you have the kingdom at your disposal through the blood of Jesus Christ. A few months ago, I had the joy of going to Africa. In the role that I work with missions, I work with missions every day. We raise $7 million a year, $8 million a year to help missionaries share Christ, to let the poor in spirit hear the gospel of Christ so they can inherit the kingdom of earth and kingdom of heaven and be with Jesus and understand the relationship of Christ. And I am in Zanzibar, and Zanzibar is a nation off the southwest tip, the southeast tip of Africa. It's an island. And in this island, it's 99% Muslim. The declaration of Christ cannot be made publicly. You can say that you're a Christ follower, but you can't tell someone about Jesus. If you do, you can be persecuted and stoned. It's a serious business. And as I'm sitting there in Zanzibar, I'm crying every day because I see the lostness of humanity. And I know Pastor Jared's talked to me about preaching this poor in spirit message. And it's troubling me because I'm seeing people who are poor in spirit. They are deep in religion. They're all following Allah. They're all following Muhammad. They're all Muslims. They're all in. They're going after it. Whatever their gods are, they're after it. But they don't know the truth of Jesus Christ. And to watch these people who are religiously zealot for their religion and yet be so totally in the dark about Jesus Christ. They're so poor in spirit. And I show up and I land on a Thursday night in Nairobi. I fly Friday morning to through Tanzania into Zanzibar. And I get to Zanzibar, and they put me in a truck. I'm not even there 10 minutes. They got me in a truck, and they're driving me out to the northeast corner of Zanzibar. I'm 400 feet from the ocean. The last 2.5 miles, I have to walk it. When I'm walking in with a few friends, there is an elderly man in a hut, and he has a little girl, his little granddaughter. She begins to cry. And the interpreter tells us that she's crying because she's never seen a white man. And we're scaring her. And I'm walking through that, and as we're walking 2.5 miles back, we're walking by huts, we're walking by little villages, we've got ruts, we see bicycles, I don't see a car anywhere. I see a few bikes, everybody's just walking. It's on a Friday, and we walk up about 400 feet from the ocean, and there's a building about the size of this building, and it's a mosque. It's a Muslim mosque. It's 5 years old. It looks immaculate. The roof, not one of the ceiling tiles had a water stain on it. Not one. There was not a spider web in a corner. There was not a rain stain on the wall. The carpet was 5 years old, and it looked like it was laid yesterday. And they sweep the carpets with brooms constantly when they're not in there praying. There's people sweeping the carpet to keep it clean and new. And we walk in at 12 o'clock, and we start talking to the imam, who is like a priest of the Muslim faith. And he's talking to us. And I finally get the courage to ask him a question. I said, where did this building come from? I mean, all I see is mud huts for miles. I don't see water anywhere. I don't see electricity anywhere. I see electricity here. Where did it come from? And he goes, that was very simple. A Muslim from Pakistan got on a big ship and put all the stuff on it. He floated from Pakistan here, and wherever he landed, he was going to build a mosque. And he landed right out there. And he walked up here, he cleared out the land, we helped him, we built the mosque. It took about a year. He fixed it all up. They fixed it up. They blessed it to the gods. Then he got back on his ship, and he's went home, and we haven't seen him for 5 years. And I'm sitting in that room, barefooted, saying, you mean to tell me that a Pakistani has a burden for people in Zanzibar to know the Muslim faith, to worship Allah, that he will bring everything he needs here to build this, and then he will go home? And we can't share Christ here? They're poor in spirit. They don't know that they don't even know. All of a sudden, the priest says, you need to leave. You got to step out. You got to move out. And it's about 1:45, and the speakers, it's about a 50-foot, 75-foot pole. They got big speakers, outdoor speakers on it, and the call to prayer, the Allah call of prayer just starts going off these loudspeakers. And by the hundreds, people come out of these woods. And they all go and they wash their feet, and if their feet aren't clean enough, they make them go back and wash their feet again so they can come on the carpet and chant in a language they don't understand to a God that's not even there. And as desperately as their flesh is trying to seek God, their spirit is poor because they don't know the revelation knowledge of Jesus Christ. And the first thing that Jesus tells those disciples is that they're going to tell you a lot about a lot of stuff. But if they don't know me, they're poor in spirit. And they're blessed. Don't judge them because they don't know me. Love them so they can find me. Love them. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall inherit the heaven, the kingdom of heaven. They will have a place prepared for them. And the first motive that Jesus wanted you and I to know was that when it comes down to everything you're doing about him, everything you're doing in your Christian faith, if you're not sharing faith with people who are poor in spirit, you're missing the divine directive. Because he came to die so he could be raised from the dead so we can live after we die. And I think it's fascinating that as we go down from here, we're going to see in verse 4, blessed are they who mourn. Blessed are they who are meek. Blessed are they who hunger for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Every step is a step closer to his revelation knowledge. Every step is a step closer to understanding Jesus. All 8 of them are motivational steps. And the 9th one is if you got all those first 8, let me tell you something. The last one is, blessed are you when you're persecuted for living for me. But it all starts with you and me understanding that because we're saved does not give us the right to judge those who are not. And it makes us responsible. Salvation is not a privilege, it's a responsibility. And we are responsible to share with people who do not know Jesus to find Christ. I am sitting the next day in Zanzibar. I am from here to that machine. I am that stand. I am 4 feet away talking to a 14-year-old kid by the name of Muhammad. And we're talking about heroes. And we're saying, what is a hero to us? What is a hero? And I've got like 7 or 8 people from Zanzibar around me. And they're telling me what they think is a hero. And I'm listening to them. We're talking English. And they're looking at me because of that southern accent that I got. And they're like, that doesn't sound like the rest of the English people here. And this 14-year-old kid goes, oh, Rick, I know what a hero is. And I go, what's a hero, Muhammad? He goes, a hero is someone who kills Christians. And I'm sitting 4 feet from him. And I realize he's serious. And I said, Muhammad, why do you believe that? He said, I don't know. That's what they've taught us. The same thing of Malachi. If you don't live right, you're going to be cursed. If you don't kill Christians, you're not going to be a hero. And I said, Muhammad, I don't see heroes like that. And he goes, well, how do you see heroes? And I said, Muhammad, I see heroes like this. If a building was burning, if this building is burning, regardless of your tribe, regardless of your religion, regardless of your family, if you're inside that building, I'm going to go in and try to rescue you and pull you out because life is precious. And to me, that would be a hero. Someone who would go and save somebody from death, from dying, from pain, regardless of their background. And he looks at me and goes, that is not how I was taught. And I said, well, you have a hard decision now. For 14 years, you've been taught one thing. You've had me come and talk to you for 10 minutes and tell you that that's not a hero. A hero will come and lay down their life for their friends. And now you have to make a decision. Who's telling you the truth? And I stood up, and there's hundreds of those kids in this room. And I realized every one of them was just like Muhammad. They were poor in spirit, deep in their religious accolades. They were going to go across the street to the temple at 5 o'clock when the call to prayer went up. But they didn't know the truth, and they weren't set free. And Jesus looks at the disciples. He says, boys, please always remember that people who are poor in spirit need my truth so they can inherit the kingdom of heaven, or this will all be for naught. So make sure that your motives are pure. Make sure that when you preach to people, you understand what you're about to do. When you minister to people, you understand that it's about me. And then when Peter goes in the book of Acts and starts throwing up this thing about prejudice, he gets slapped down sideways. And I imagine Peter got up and went, blessed are the poor in spirit. The problem is you're not in Africa. You're not in Central America. You're not in the Ukraine. You're in Rapid City. That's the bad news. Here's the good news. Someone you work with, someone that's going to be at lunch in the next table to you, someone you're going to walk by at a hospital, at a Walmart, are going to say something that you're going to be triggered to either respond or walk by. We all have choices. This week when we were out at one of the restaurants, we had a choice to talk. A few months ago, I was watching an interview with Bill Clinton. I'm not saying I advocate or I support Bill Clinton. He's a president. I honor presidencies. But I think what he said was very intriguing to me. He said that when he was the president, they came to him on a number of occasions and said, Mr. President, we need to respond with swift and powerful defense action. We need to bomb them. We need to blow them up. We need to kill them, because if we don't do that, they're going to see us as weak. And he said, the first couple times they did that to me, I didn't know what to do. And then he said, it hit me. And they came to him one time about what was going on over in China. And they wanted him to bomb China. And after they gave this whole big explanation, he said, I just sat right there. And he had just looked at him. He said, I never interrupted him. I just let him talk to me. He said, when he was done, I said, guys, I just need to ask you one thing. You say that if I don't act today, I'm weak. I need to ask you one question. Can I bomb them tomorrow? And they said, yes, Mr. President, you can bomb them any day you want. He said, then get them on the phone. I'm not weak. And that's you and me. Every day we live under Christ. What Keith shared with us. We're new creatures in Christ. Every day you have an opportunity. Jesus puts people into your pathway so you can let people know, resonate, see that you are not going to let people walk poor in spirit, but you want them to inherit the kingdom of heaven and to find Jesus Christ as Lord. And it's our responsibility when we walk down the street, when we go to the restaurant, when we're at work, when we're with our family, that we continue to remember people are poor in spirit if they do not know Christ. And so the first lesson of the Beatitude is simply this. We have to share the good news because we are rich in His mercy. So as you're sitting here, I want you to think about the person that you work with, maybe the husband that's not saved or the wife that's not saved, the kids that were raised in church that now they're married and gone and they're not living for God. The person that you're going to run by at the store. And how are you going to let Jesus use you because you retreated in prayer and said, God, prepare me for the moment that I'll have to produce so I can go in prayer and celebrate and be re-energized to prepare and produce again? Or do we just say, you know what, that's their problem? Jesus wants them saved. He'll send somebody their way. You're about to hear for the next 9 weeks one of the most serious set of series messages you will ever hear in your life. And here's the bad news. You'll have to give an account to it. And if you skip out, you're going to have to give an account for that. You might as well just man up and come and let Jesus just deal with you. But may I tell you this? God's favors on this church. This church has not been cursed. This church has been blessed. You're walking under the blessings. Every time we turn around, God does something else for you guys. You have a very rare and special gift. And God is now wanting to activate that gift that he's been moving corporately to the individual component so you can multiply the blessing so the harvest will be greater, because the motive of your gift is that you understand the poor in spirit do not see Christ. You're good soil. Allow the fruit of the Spirit out of Galatians, and allow the gifts of the Spirit, of the Holy Spirit in Acts and in Corinthians, being nurtured by your soil, your motives. It's your choice. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I ask you today at 12:17, I ask you now, Jesus, that you would just allow us to comprehend the core teaching of the poor in spirit. Therefore, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Yes, Lord, I understand that there is a perplexed dimension of the poor in spirit, but Lord, we're looking at its core. And so, Lord, I now want us to resonate that our mission is to let those that are poor in spirit find the kingdom of heaven in their life, and that we are going to be the channels for which that will happen. Lord, I pray that you would just give us this opportunity today to make commitments to you and to ourselves, that I will share faith. I will allow people to see Christ living in me. I will help people that have no reason to be helped, that I'm only going to pass by. I'm only going to be a piece of a moment of a blessing, but it's going to be good soil, and I'm going to germinate a seed in it, and God, you're going to perform the harvest out of it. Lord, I ask that you would give me the courage to walk according to the motives of the Beatitudes. A hero is not someone who kills Christians. A hero is someone who shares Christ. For he is the light of the world, and he's the salt of the earth. Bad times, we'll have them. Rough days, they'll be there. Perplexed moments, absolutely. But in all things, give thanks to God. Use us, Lord. Inoculate us with the blessing of the Beatitudes. Think about someone that you could talk to this week. Think about an action that you can change so people can see Christ in you, that you've been acting a little bit different. And while you're doing that, I know that there's some people in this room that you're going through a season of travail. You're going through a season of desperation. You feel despondent. You feel that everything you're doing is just not working. You feel right now that, man, if I talk to someone, I just make it worse. Every action I take, I mess up at work. I'm messing up at home. I'm messing up in me. I'm really trying, but things just don't work out right now. It's just like I'm about to, there's some in here that may be without a job. You may be without a family. You may have gone through a divorce. You may have gone through a death. You may have gone through distant separation. And you're just going, Rick, I am depleted spiritually. I am just on empty. And I know I need to share my faith, but I need my faith re-energized. If that's you, I want to ask you to stand to your feet quickly and say, Rick, pray for me. I am just at the end of the rope. I am just wrung out. I am just so tired. I'm there, man. I need help. I can't give out what I can't find internally. And I know Jesus is Lord. I know he loves me. And if you're here and you do not know Jesus as Lord and Savior, this is a great time to stand up. Just be one of the multitude. Here's what I'm going to ask. I've been there myself. And I'm going to ask you to, if you don't mind, to step out of your seat if you feel comfortable and come and stand down the front. I'm not going to embarrass you and I'm not going to do anything. I just want to pray with you. Because I remember the days when I am just drug out. And just come and stand across the front here. And just look at me. It's okay. You can come on. Just come out. I'm not going to make you sign a card. I'm not going to make you make a pledge. I'm not going to. I just want you to be up here because, man, I've been where you're at, and it is hard. It is hard when you say, I can't even move, dude. You're lucky to get me up. Thanks for coming. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Let me formally introduce myself. I'm Rick. And you're very important. And you're very special. Some of you are here because you're going through medical crises that you just don't see any end to. Others you're going through emotional travail that's driving you nuts. Some of you are going through marital problems, and others are going through physical issues, and others you are going through financial. Some of you just can't find your way. Some of you feel lonely. There's a big deal between feeling lonely and being alone. Jesus never wants you to be alone. He'll never leave you. He doesn't want you alone. There are times where you feel lonely, but it's just the feeling. But when your feelings become truth and you start saying, I am alone, there's nobody I can talk to, there's nobody I can tell, there's nothing. You need help. Here's what I'm going to do. If that's where you're at in this service, I'm going to stand right here and I'm going to talk to you. And if we talk till 1:30, we talk till 1:30 because you're not alone. But this is what I do know about this group of people. You'll have to just understand that when you're talking to me alone, there's going to be about 20 people that'll sit up there in those chairs till 1:30 because they want you to know they're with you too. They'll forsake their lunch. They'll forsake their friends. They'll forsake because they don't want you to think you're alone. Number 2. You're going to get through this. Some of you need to get help. You need to talk to someone. You need to talk to Jared, Pastor Jared, or you may need to talk to someone at work, or you may need to talk to a family friend. You may need to talk to a different doctor. You need to talk. You don't get out of the poorness by holding it all in. It's got to come out. It's like poison. And all it does is ruin the soil of your life. And number 3, God loves you so much that he wanted you here today to hear this message that's not supposed to be, this isn't what's supposed to be preached. It's this poor in spirit message, but it's different. Because he wants you to know you're not alone. He's here with you. So this is what I'm going to do. Don't panic. Don't freak. For those of you who are not familiar with church. I would like someone who's ever been poor in spirit, and you know how it feels to stand here. I want to ask you to stand up and come and stand behind somebody right up here. Just get up. If you know where they have been, I want you to come and find someone and stand behind them. Go, buddy, I know where you're at. I've been there. It's tough. You're not going to be alone. And in a few seconds, you're going to feel someone behind you. They're going to lay their hand on your shoulder to let you know that you're loved. They're not going to do anything. We've got someone right up here, a young lady right up here. There's too deep, yeah. And so, come on, yeah, Michelle, right here. Thank you. I've learned in my loneliest hours of being poor in spirit, when I felt so distant from God, I either disappointed him greatly or he's mad at me and he just doesn't care for me anymore. And no matter how much I pray, he doesn't matter. He's not there. That God always sent someone to me to tell me that my imaginations were not the truth. And that's what these people are doing. In just a moment, I'm going to pray for you, and they're going to pray with you. And we're going to pray that God will help you so you will not feel the anguish that's been going on in your heart. Some of you are desperately lonely because you've lost loved ones. Whatever. Those of you in the building that are with us and understand what's happening here, I want you to stand across the building. If you understand that these are friends that are in need, I want to ask you to stretch your hands out towards them and pray for them and pray that God just gives them strength and gives them courage and gives them hope, because it's terrible to be poor in spirit. Feel disconnected. And let's pray. Father, in Jesus' name, I pray right now for these friends that are standing in the altar. They've come here, Lord, to ask you to help them. 17 people, Lord, are here now asking you to help them stabilize the pain and the disconnect and struggle that they're going through here during this time of life. This season of life has been a season of despondency and desperation and travail. It's been a time of pain and sorrow and lostness. And Lord, I just pray that these friends here right now will know that you are with them, that they are not alone, that they are not poor, but they are rich in the mercies that you have given them. And that, Lord, you will give them the desires of their heart as they delight themselves in you. And that through this time, you will share with them and give them information that will help them for the rest of their life. And Lord, I pray for those that are truly poor in spirit. They have no reality of you, no consciousness of you. Lord, I pray that you would send us. Send us across the street. Send us across the block. Send us across the state. Send us across the country. Send us across the world. 4 billion people have never heard the message of Christ. 4 billion people. Lord, resonate this in our heart. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's there. Let's lift our hands across the building. God inhabits the praises of his people. I really sense that God is doing something here. And I understand it's right at 12:30. It's time to go. We should be gone. But God is doing something in this room today. Let's just give God a moment. And let's just stop and say, Father, I praise you. I praise you, Lord, that I am not poor in spirit, but, Lord, I am rich in your mercy. I'm rich in your love. I thank you, Lord, that you've given me these connecting pieces and these family of faith and your uncompromised word that I can walk holy before you. Lord, I pray for these friends that are in the altars that, Lord, you will be able over the next few days for them to connect into you and to get through their issues and not just to react to the problems, but to step back and pray and give you a chance, God. Lord, I praise you and I thank you for your goodness and your mercy. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. For those of you who are in the altars, like I said, we're here. If you want to talk, we'll listen. If not, thank you for being here today. Come back next week because you're going to hear blessed are those that mourn. And that's a powerful message. We hope you have a great Sunday. Go with God. Hug someone before you leave and tell them, hey, we're rich in Christ. Have a great week. God bless.